Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rise of the Phoenix, and in this video, I'm going to be giving a Dwalin, I think that's how you pronounce his name, overview/guide. Dwalin is, in my opinion, the best good side tier 1 commander. I'm sure people are going to disagree with me in the comment section and say that Eowyn is better. We can have that debate in the comment section. I'm happy to have it as long as everybody is civil. But let's go ahead and jump right into the meat and potatoes of this video. So Dwalin is a warrior. That means at level 20, he gets plus 25 might, plus 2 skill points, and his physical damage is increased by 10%. Quite a solid trait, especially for a commander like Dwalin. He gains a pretty respectable amount of might and speed per level. I did not mean to click that button. His focus is very, well, how do you say, not that good. So I would say that focus is his weak point. Let's go ahead and look at some potential skill builds for Dwalin. The reason that I like Dwalin so much is because he is such a flexible commander. Eowyn is extraordinarily predictable. Anytime you're fighting Eowyn, she's going to have cavalry. Since you know she's going to have cavalry, you can bring an army that counters cavalry, and it's going to greatly reduce her effectiveness. The thing that makes Dwalin so strong, in my opinion, is his versatility and unpredictability. Unfortunately, currently I only have Dwalin at Respect 1, so we're going to cover that first, and the Respect 1 build is super duper boring and straightforward. You just put points in all of his stuff. Musician is an extremely powerful skill, in my opinion. That the reason being is the level 15 effect, the max level effect, gives your entire army plus 3 attack. And what that means is it gives them plus 3 damage. So if you take something like a Warden or Sentinel, whatever the elf tier 3 archer is, I believe it does 25 to 26 damage per attack. Well, if it's with Dwalin, and how it does 28 to 29 damage per attack. And that is on a per individual unit basis. So if you're bringing, let's say, 2,000 of those archers, all of a sudden this max level effect is giving those archers plus 6,000 damage potentially. So it is massive for your army's damage output. The skills that are tied to Musician gives some healing and removes a debuff. That's somewhat okay situationally. I don't think that's why Dwalin is good. And then you have Relief, gives an allied unit with the highest defense HP. This is particularly nice because it targets your unit with the highest defense. So if you're building a smart army composition with him, let's say you put something like Guardians or Iron Warriors in there, you know that they're always going to be getting the healing, and that's really nice because they're going to be the ones in the front lines taking a lot of damage. Then we have Experienced Warrior, gives some extra damage, pretty decent, gives him plus damage against melee units, that's okay. Commanders kind of attack at a random as far as I can tell, as far as I know. So sometimes the max level effect will help, sometimes it won't. He has Hunt Down. Every time he hits something, he gains damage. Pretty decent. Collaboration, even more damage. So once you get him into the higher levels of Respect, that's where you really unlock his versatility. At Respect level 0 through 2, he does reasonable damage and puts out reasonable healing and can pretty much carry around any kind of troops that he wants. Once you get into Respect 3, Respect 5, you unlock a lot of other build options. Durin's Blood being a pretty popular build from what I've seen. One thing to keep in mind, if you are going to pump up his Respect levels and go for Durin's Blood, you're most likely going to want to combo it with Experienced Warrior or his rank 5, Respect 5 title. That is because Durin's Blood increases his skill damage. I do not believe this applies to healing. I've seen people running Durin's Blood and then also running Musician and not really picking up his damaging skills. which to me seems a little bit counterproductive, as far as I know and believe, Durin's Blood only affects skill damage output, not even auto attacks, as far as I know. Thankfully, he has 2 damage skills behind Durin's Blood, so you could easily go all in on damage with Dwalin. Just fill out Experienced Warrior, fill out Durin's Blood, ignore the healing stuff. Who cares? Your Dwalin's going to be doing like 150 to 180k damage, maybe even more if you have some really sick gear on him. And he's just going to be chopping through everything in sight. Once you get him to respect 5, you have Warrior of the Lonely Mountain. This skill is crazy for soloing dragons. You can max this thing out. You can max Musician out. You can come down here for Giant Slayer. And like he can literally, I mean, other people have done videos on this. He can literally just sit there with a stack of Master Throwers and solo dragons and Balrogs and lose, 200, 300, 400 units maybe, and you can farm tons and tons of gold that way. However, I would not recommend Giant Slayer under normal circumstances. If you respec into it so that you can farm a whole bunch of gold over a weekend, definitely a perfectly viable strategy. If you know you're going to be fighting like trolls or Mumakeels or for some reason Ents, actually are Ents even considered large units? I'm not sure. I'll take that one back. If you know you're going to be fighting large units, you could spec into it. In general, I don't really like the idea of it because it requires the large unit to have an effect. And most of the time so far, I haven't been fighting large units. Hasn't been useful for me. But he also has Longbeard back here, which is, in my opinion, okay somewhat. You ignore some of their defense. I just think having more damaging skills is better, especially because you're not always going to be hitting a high defense target. So if I was going for pure damage, I would do Experienced Warrior, Durin's Blood, and their associated skills. If you want Dwalin to be a tanky, healing-focused commander, I would pick up Warrior of the Lonely Mountain, Musician, and the associated skills. So he's kind of a commander that you really can't go wrong with. Like the only mistake you could make is maxing this out and then not fighting giant targets. Dwalin is just one of those dudes that has it all. He does it all, and he is definitely deserving of an S tier ranking on any tier list video, in my opinion. So let's talk about some unit compositions that you can build with Dwalin. And I'm not going to go over too many of these because the answer is, of course, Dwalin's not in my hometown, is he? The answer is pretty much anything that you want to run on Dwalin will be effective. It's going to somewhat depend on how you build him, though. So this is the army that I'm currently running. It's kind of the leftovers of what I had laying around after taking a couple 300 tiles, capturing Tau Enerath, and also engaging in PvP earlier today. So this isn't necessarily what I would always recommend on him, but the rule of thumb here is if you're focusing on his defensive abilities and healing, you're going to want to bring more damage dealing units, particularly ranged units. And if you're going to be focusing more on his offensive prowess, you're going to want to bring units that can absorb some damage and tank for you. So if you're building him with healing, I could see myself running something like this. Because Ranges of the North and Wardens are going to do pretty good damage. Cataphracts also do pretty good damage. Cataphracts and Rangers are relatively tanky, while also dealing good damage, which makes the healing more efficient and more effective. I could potentially run triple ranged unit. If you know you're going to be fighting cavalry, bring in some guards of the tower. These guys are a pretty nice all-around troop. Like, they're okay at melee damage. They're relatively tanky. They're super great to have against cavalry. I could see myself running this, which is what I was running earlier. Pretty much a nice all-around comp here. Very, very meaty, tanky front line with some high DPS units in the back. The reason I wouldn't want to run... I don't have any Master Throwers trained right now, do I? The reason I wouldn't want to run something like this and then throw Master Throwers in is because if the Cataphracts die, then I have 2 fragile ranged units in the back. They're going to start getting pounded by enemy melee attacks. And not having ranges to the north around can also make these sentinels vulnerable to enemy commander attacks, particularly attacks that specifically target ranged units. So I really like having these ranges to the north in there to protect the sentinels. If you're going for his pure damage build, just pick 3 beefy tanky units and let Dwalin carry the fight on his own. Finally, let's finish up real quick with some itemization. My itemization is far from optimal because I don't have great items. I wish I had my wife's account because she's been pulling orange items and purple items like candy. It's actually pretty ridiculous and infuriating, but it is what it is. So his itemization is also going to depend on how you build his skill builds. If you're going to go for healing and defensive play, you're going to want to focus more on the focus stat because it will increase his heals. It'll make your units tankier, which increases the effectiveness of heals. In my case, he's pretty balanced since he's only respect 1, so I'm kind of balancing everything out a little bit. One really nice attribute on a weapon for Dwalin, though, is any type of extra damage after he attacks is very, very handy, particularly physical damage, because he's a warrior. So I have this Elven Dirk here. I have Scout's Mail, Might and Speed. I like beefing up his speed a little bit, which helps my turn order in battle. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I am a huge fan of being able to go first in fights. I have a Pure Might Helm, helps my men be a little bit tankier. So in Dwalin's case, I would really like to run an all-man army, but it's only 1% because I haven't refined it. So not a huge deal if I run elves and other things in his armies. And then a pretty crappy little accessory. Well, it's a good accessory. The crappy part is the March speed, 2% is not particularly useful. But the rule of thumb here, like I was saying earlier, is if you're building him defensively and focusing on healing, you want to focus on focus. And if you're building him for damage, you want to focus on might. And I would also suggest adding some speed in there, like on the Scout's Mail, if you can, just to help your units go first in battle. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you learned something useful. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel, and leave a comment down below. I'll see you in the next one. Rise of the Phoenix, over and out.